god. What was I saying? Hey guys, it's me, Moo. So I have a Kindle Unlimited subscription, and I decided to read this book, Tastes Like Candy by Ivy Tholen. And this is actually a slasher novel, and I was like, ooh, I like slasher movies. Let me read this. So the synopsis of this story is Violet, the main character, and 7 lucky girls that are chosen for a senior scavenger hunt go to a carnival after hours, find what they need to find, and then they need to get out of there and celebrate in the morning with all of the other friends. But someone actually is waiting for them at the carnival and slashes their way through the friend group. So that's the synopsis. So like always, I have my notes. So in the first chapter, we learn a lot about Violet and characters in her life. Like the first 20 pages is nothing but flashbacks and us learning about Violet and how she found her love for the violin and how she applied to only one college and she has yet to get a acceptance letter, while all of her friends are getting their acceptance letter, or all of her friends are getting their big break. Like 2 of them, one writes a comic and the other draws it, and they're getting published by a big publishing industry. One of their friends, Blythe, is like this big YouTube star. Her best friend, James, she was accepted into a school of her dreams that she had wanted to be accepted into since she was little. There's so many other characters, and there were a lot of characters to keep track of, and I have ADHD, so I was like, who the hell are these characters? The thing about this book is that we are thrown a lot of random scenes, and I feel like these scenes were actually to add more pages to the story because the climax was kind of short. So in the first chapter, we learn about Violet. We learn about her love for the violin, how she got to love the violin. We learn about her friendship with James, who she had met since they were little kids. We learn about James's passion and how she got into the school of her dreams. And Violet is like, oh, I'm such a loser. We also have a chapter where they go and help James's grandfather move out of the house, which I felt was completely random and had nothing to do with the story at all. There was a lot of talk about the 90s and it felt so out of place. It just felt out of place, especially the dialogue. The dialogue seems a little choppy. There's a lot of the dialogue doesn't make sense to me. I don't know if it's because it's a Gen Z language kind of thing, but I was just like, what does this have to do with the story? What does this have to do with the conversation? There's a lot of pop culture references that I was like kind of rolling my eyes to. And not only that, there's a lot of talk of the 90s, but a lot of the stuff that they reference and they talk about is like early 2000s, honestly. So then we get to the chapter about the senior scavenger hunt. And they normally do it at school, but then there's this really lengthy chapter about the girls talking about it and what happens. And then there was another really lengthy chapter with nothing but text dialogue, like all the girls are texting each other. Throughout the entire story, the first few chapters, there is a first-person point of view, and that is Violet. We see everything through her eyes. Really brought me out of it was that there were times where Violet will mention a character and go into their backstory, like a deep dive into their backstory. And I'm like, that feels a little out of place. And then we get to the gas station scene and it was just lengthy and all they were talking about really didn't make any sense. There was some hints here and there about their friendship, about the scavenger hunt, about her going into college, but it was a really lengthy scene. And then we get to a next chapter, and the next chapter is third point of view of a character named Ted. And I'm like, who the hell is Ted? And it turns out Ted is a security guard for the carnival, and unfortunately he gets killed. And the thing is, this really brought me out of the story, because if you're going to start a story with the first person point of view, we have to live through the first person point of view. We have no idea what's happening. We have no idea what's going to happen to the characters, but suddenly we're pulled out of it to a different point of view, a third person point of view. And it kind of brought me out of the slasher scene. It kind of made me feel like, oh, the story wasn't intended to be written as a novel. It was intended to be written as a movie, because it kind of felt like that. We have Violet, the main character, her point of view, her talking about her friends, her introducing us, the audience, to all of her memories, her flashbacks, all of that, and then boom, we get a third point of view, and I was like, this would have been better as a movie, honestly. I'm kind of picky when it comes to point of views. I don't like head hopping. I like, if it's one person, first person point of view, we stay there and we have no idea what's going on with the story. And unfortunately, throughout the story, we do get head hopping. We get first person point of view and then a chapter of a third person point of view. So then the girls end up going to a restaurant, and they're kind of bitching about a character named Blythe. And Blythe is a very popular YouTube star, and she let fame get to her head, and Violet's talking about how they're not really friends anymore because she's changed and all of this. And then they end up going to a restaurant. So there are 8 girls. We have the main character Violet, her best friend James, we have Blythe, the YouTube star, we have Claire, Mila, River, Gracie, and Lolly. And I'm not gonna lie, because there were so many girls to keep track of, I was like, who's who? And thank goodness for Violet always bringing up, like, Lolly was the super smart one. Gracie and River, I think they were the writer and the comic book artist. Mila, Claire, I don't exactly know who they are. I know one of them was a swimmer, and another one was like a softball player. I don't know, because there were so many to keep track of. So then at this chapter, before they go to the carnival, and it took a while to get to the carnival, honestly, because we had chapter after chapter of kind of filler pages and filler story, and I honestly felt like none of the fillers had anything to do with the story until we get to the restaurant where the girls are having their dinner before they go into the empty carnival. So while they're there, they start talking about a girl that they used to go to school with, and she was accepted into Harvard and everybody knew, and then now she's waiting tables. And then Violet's like, they start gossiping about this girl, like, oh yeah, she went to Harvard, she had a nervous breakdown. And then like one of the girls, I forgot who it was, texted somebody they knew that went to school with the girl, and he texted back, oh yeah, she had a mental breakdown, that's why she's back home, blah blah blah. And I'm like, what does this have to do with the story, honestly? So after they're finished eating, we also see Blythe like fake pictures for her Instagram or her YouTube or something like that, and we learn that she's obsessed with it, and we're like, okay. And then they pay for their food, and then Violet's like, hey, I'm gonna go talk to the girl that used to go to Harvard and tell her, hey, I could connect with you, I know how it feels. But this girl, she goes to talk to her, and this girl is not nice. Like, straight off the bat, she's a total bitch. And then all of a sudden she gets a knife and puts it under Violet's neck as if to threaten to kill her. And I'm like, what is this? What is this? Like, really? This is really unnecessary. Really unnecessary. And I guess it was trying to hint that maybe she might be the slasher at the same time, but I was like, no, this girl is too busy working at a restaurant as a waitress. Would she really want to chase after 8 teenagers around a carnival? I don't think so. So then we finally get to the carnival, right? But there is such a lengthy few pages before they go inside. So they meet a teacher out of class, and we're informed that he's a creeper. Then I think it was River, she ended up giving everybody circus peanuts that were edibles, so everybody's super high. Blythe eats so many, and then she gets drunk, and we find out that Blythe is an alcoholic 18-year-old, and you're like, what the heck? And then we also find out that Blythe and Violet used to be friends, but because of Blythe's popularity, they kind of just drifted apart, and that Violet doesn't even watch her friends' YouTube videos or even like support her in any way. And we're like, okay, what does this have to do with the story? And then I was like thinking, I think Blythe is the killer because YouTube, a lot of people that get popular super fast ends up getting replaced super quickly as well. So she might be crashing and burning, and maybe she's taking out all on the girls because all the girls have their future ahead of her and she doesn't. That's what I thought. And then we end up getting into the carnival. About 30% of the carnival was just the girls slowly being murdered by a mysterious person in a mask known as the Licker. I did not like that name for the slasher, the Licker. I just kept thinking of Resident Evil for some reason. And I was like, stop, this is a slasher, stop. So going back to POV hopping, so we have Violet. She has no idea what's happening. And then next chapter, we're going to get a third person point of view of one of the girls dying. A very horrible and gory death. And that's it. And it's like, I didn't like that as Violet, we got to live in her brain and then we jump to a third person point of view and we see how they die. I really would have liked it if Violet kind of stumbled upon their bodies and she's like, oh my God, you know, or she kind of witnesses she is the final girl. She should have witnessed like her friends dying or something like that, because in movies, that's what happens. A lot of the final girls do witness their good friends dying. She did witness Lolly being killed and then James. Spoiler alert, I am going to say who dies. Basically everybody but Violet, because she is the final girl. We do get views on a lot of how a lot of the girls dies. There is a hint where at one point we think that James is the murderer. And then the twist is it's Blythe. And I was like, called it. I totally called it. I knew it was Blythe. And the reason why it was Blythe was because of what I thought. Blythe's YouTube video was not, YouTube started to crash and burn. She was canceled over something really dumb. She had got a fish from the carnival and put it in a bowl and people started canceling her, and then she ended up changing the fish out. But once she crashed and burned, there was no way for her to get back up there. She tried to have her father save her, but it turned out that he has been evading taxes, so he might go to prison, and he wasn't even helping her with her taxes, so she might go to prison. She has been buying followers and nobody really likes her anymore. So she decided, hey, I'm crashing and burning. I might as well just go and kill all of these girls I grew up with, because it's not fair that they have their future ahead of them and I don't. So she ends up saving Violet for last, and she wasn't even going to kill Violet because Violet never got the envelope acceptance letter to the school of her dreams. So Blythe's like, well, you're a loser like me, so I'm going to keep you alive. So she ends up getting all of the bodies that she can manage and putting it on a roller coaster, and she was going to have the Violet die with them or something like that. I can't really remember because at this point there was a lot of talking. Every time Blythe went to go kill a girl, there was a lengthy monologue or a lengthy conversation, and I was just kind of over it, but I really wanted to know how it ended. Violet manages to talk Blythe into killing herself, so Blythe ends up throwing herself off of the ride, and they're like really high up, so she ends up dying. And the thing is though, Blythe had been posting videos of her killing these girls, pictures of the girls dead, and her apology and all of that. And the police were headed that way, and the Blythe was getting text messages after text messages from people like, call me, is this real, what's going on? And then Violet did not wait for the police. She ended up stealing Blythe's Tesla, driving to where the other seniors were at, bloodied, covered in blood, her fingers missing, and sit down to order pancakes. And people are like, what's going on? What's going on? And one of the girls that she's known since she was a kid was like, oh my God, your mom knew you were going to come here, and gives her the envelope of her acceptance letter. And then the police are coming, and that's where it ends. And I was like, what? I wish it was written in third person point of view, because I feel that Ivy's writing is stronger in a third person point of view than a first person, because in third person we got show and don't tell, we got a lot of the the anticipation that you could get with slasher movies. But in the first person, I felt like her writing was a little choppy and there was a lot of tell and no show. And Violet was a character, but not a fleshed out character, if that makes sense. But honestly, this book would have been well written if it was third person, because with third person, you could get away with having a main character, Violet, and going through her daily life, and then switching to another character being killed off and stuff like that seamlessly. But because it first started out in first person, we are trapped in Violet's mind, because in first person, you have no idea what's going on with the other characters. You're as clueless, the readers are as clueless as the main character. But then we get a third person point of view out of nowhere, and you're just like, oh, well, that brings out the fun. Like, I really wanted, instead of a third person point of view of the security guard being murdered, I would have really liked it if Violet had stumbled upon his body, and us as the audience would be like, oh my god, the liquor killed the security guard, because we would have the same surprise as Violet. But we didn't get that. We already knew what happened to Ted. So when Violet stumbled upon his body later in the story, we couldn't be like, they killed Ted, because we already knew they killed Ted. We were like, oh, poor Ted, he got his head cut off. That's sad. It kind of brought you out of that anticipation of the murder, of the slasher coming. And this book had a lot of scenes that I deemed not necessary to the story, because a lot of it didn't really fit in the flow of what was going to happen at the carnival. If I were to rate this book, it would be a 3 out of 5. And the main reasons being the point of view hopping. I honestly think this book would have been better as a third person point of view, because if Ivy was going for that movie kind of flow, third person would have fit the novel better. The slasher, he talked a lot. Blythe as a slasher talked a lot while killing their victims. It always brought me out of it, because I was like, oh, she's gonna kill River, she's gonna kill Claire. But a lot of talking, especially the scene where Violet was trying to rescue James and then Blythe revealed that she was the killer. There was just page after page of dialogue instead of trying to save James, and it had me skipping. So if the scenes that were, like, to me, filler chapters, and it kind of intertwined towards the carnival, I think would have fit better. Also, the dialogue during the murders kind of brought me out of the story. It would have been a great story if third person, a lot of the filler chapters or a lot of the scenes and dialogues intertwined somehow with the carnival and what was going to happen to them. Because honestly, when I first read the first half, I was like, what does this have to do with the girls being murdered later? It really didn't tie in together. There was a lot of dialogue that didn't make sense or was really choppy and didn't really flow. And I love dialogue. I love when characters talk. But when they talk at the wrong times, or if they say something that I'm like, what do you mean? I will be brought out of the story. A lot of the pulp cultures, YouTube, that also brought me out of the story. The story as a slasher is okay, but not great, because these girls were drunk or high, because they were making so many mistakes. It was just so easy to pick them off. I think it would have been a better slasher kind of novel if the girls, because they were all smart. We are told that these girls are all smart in their own ways. We are told that they are very intelligent and they know how to get out of quick binds. But because they were high and because of this, they made so many mistakes, and because Blythe knew them, I felt that if the girls actually gathered together and put their smarts to getting out of there and doing everything right, and then all of a sudden Blythe still managing to kill them, would have gave it more stakes. Will I reread this book? Unfortunately, no. Will I read more of Ivy's works? Probably. I'm just not in the mood of a slasher anymore or anything horror related right now. I'm actually in the mood of cozy fantasy, so I'm gonna start reading that. So that is my review/rant of Tastes Like Candy, a slasher novel by Ivy Tholen. And I'll see you guys later. Bye!